everyone. I'm Allison. Thank you for joining me for Where I'm From, number 132 with Mimi. What have you been reading? I just read this really beautiful, joyful book, Lunar New Year Love Story by Jean Luen Yang and illustrated by Lei Wen Pham. And I love graphic novels and I particularly enjoy graphic memoirs. This is just a story about this love story about these two teenagers and set around Lunar New Year and lion dancing. And I just, it was just lovely. He did American Born Chinese and Dragon Hoops, and he's great. So Mimi, oh, here you are. Yay.
I can't believe it worked.
It did. It does.
I was
Sometimes, most of
nervous.
the
I've
time.
never done an Instagram live. The technology made me nervous. You can hear me and
Yes.
all that?
Yes. I'm a lot of people's first Instagram live. So um, you're in good company. So how are you today, Mimi? And is it Mimi? I realized I should have asked because I do know someone named with the same spelling as you, but it's pronounced Mimi.
That's
Oh,
me too. It's Minnie.
okay.
Thank you for asking.
Just before we were going live, I was like, oh shoot, because usually I do ask people when I'm not sure, and I was so confident your name was Mimi until we went on. I was like, oh no, I bet.
Most people call me that, and it really doesn't bother me. But that's amazing that you know someone else that's Minnie.
Yeah, yeah. So, how are you today?
Good. Thank you for arranging this so we could be here on International Women's Day because I
Yes,
had
that
asked you
how
that.
fortuitous. Yes, that was your idea, 100%, because I forget that it's International Women's Day because I resent that we get one day.
Right?
Um,
Crazy. It's crazy. But it was on my mind. I didn't have anything
yeah,
special planned. So
yeah,
this is great.
yeah.
And I found this mug to sip out
Oh,
of in
everything's backwards on this because, of course, we're
okay.
on the backwards facing camera or
It
the.
says never underestimate the power of a girl with a book, Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I thought that would be a good little sip to take
That
for
is a
today.
good. I have earrings that are her descent color, and I like wearing them because they make me feel like there are lots of inspiring women, and they do make a difference. And even when sometimes it feels like our rights are slowly eroding, there's still hope. So anyhow, get out and vote, everyone.
Yes.
No matter hopeless,
We
however
need
hopeless
everyone
it
this year. It's
feels.
so
Yes,
important.
and
And
vote in your local elections, which just happened, but it's always a good thing to remember your local elections really matter.
could not agree more.
Look at all these people. Hello, Sarah and Jocelyn, and it's lovely.
Thank you guys so much for coming on. Now I can be
Yes.
more nervous.
No, you can't disappoint, so you don't need to be nervous. But you were tweaking your poem till the last minute, I noticed.
I, I I can't help but be that way because do you ever get a word perfect? Like you
Mm.
have to tweak it one more time and yeah.
Yeah, yes, I reread things until they feel right.
Yeah.
And especially I think with a poem that you're going to read out loud, you might have read it out loud to yourself and it didn't feel quite right, and you want it to feel like something you can easily speak out loud
Yeah, that's true.
and not trip over it. So,
Yeah.
would you like to read your poem?
Sure, Allison. I'll read my poem. Where I'm From, inspired by George L. Lyon. I'm from Patton's Purrs and his brush bristling with creamsicle-colored fur, from packages of Kents and seltzer bottles delivered by the seltzer man. I'm from a rusty fourth floor fire escape, sooty steel bars on the window, laden with locks and the sound of sirens. How I cowered every night. I'm from the Catskill Mountains in summer, vibrating thunder, pine needles, and climbing a fort in a treetop so high my hair rustled the leaves. We named it the secret place. No cowering there, where wind gusts infused me with a light I'd seek again and again in the mountains. I'm from inappropriate Yiddish jokes and short torsos, from Sabina and Isaac Zelig staring straight in the camera in black and white. I'm from boisterous guffaws and strained secrets in foreign words. From who do you think you are? And this is my house. I say what goes after the divorce. I'm from Shema Israel, whispered with fingers covering eyes and bodies swaying back and forth in tzitzis. I'm from New York City and displaced Jews, sour stuffed cabbage and instant Nescafe. From Amama, rolling stewed meat around a pickle and egg, spearing it with a toothpick, and me becoming vegetarian. From the father, who is the only Holocaust survivor of his family, no grandparents, aunts, uncles, or cousins. The mother who worked as a lab tech since 16. A dusty bookshelf in the cat's room holds rows of plastic sleeve albums cataloging shiny innocence. I am from echoes of accents, steps crossing oceans, and scribbling it all down in smudged pencil to never forget.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
So what was this experience like for you writing the poem, Millie?
I think it's a brilliant project, Allison. You know, I think with having been working on a memoir for 5 years, I philosophically believe everyone has stories, everyone has things to say, everyone has things to share, and that's exactly what this poem does. And they're so unique to the person. So I love it. I love it that anybody can do this project. Anybody can fill in,
Yes.
what speaks to them.
Yeah. And do you see the praise in the Sarah and Casey?
Thank
It's lovely to see
you.
you, not see you both, but see your names. Um, it was beautiful, and you really you talked a lot about your history and so much of it, a vast slice of history, and how you all, not just where you're from, but your ancestors, which of course is true of all of us. Did you find it like, did you have to pick and choose, or was it just clear sort of what you wanted to talk
Yes,
about?
I looked at the template and the examples, and most people did write sort of from early childhood, which is what I did. I mean, I suppose you could adapt it any way
Yeah.
you want.
Mm-hmm.
But especially where I'm from,
Mm-hmm.
just speaks to me as origins.
Yeah.
And we're all, from who came before us to, well, that's part of the poem, right? You fill in their
Yes.
names.
Yes, I love that.
Yeah, no, I love that. And, the poem asks for spirituality and religion. I mean, it covers a lot
It does.
for place in nature, for your, I think what your home looked like. So, so I just,
It's a good template for a memoir writer, or for somebody, even I think if you're trying to create a character in the world they live in, like it's improved my writing for sure, listening to these poems and considering um, how important details are, and how they give us something as a listener or reader to hang on to. And even though our lives are very, very different, I certainly related, and I'm always intrigued by is it who do you think you are? Who's this is my house? What was your quote? That was
both of
yeah.
those.
I just find who do you think you are, which was such a common thing that was said around, for a very long time. Um, that there's no right answer to that question, and um, I mean, it's just so erasing. I think I'm me. That's enough to have a reason to be uncomfortable or want to say whatever I'm saying, and
Yeah,
it was just such a common thing that was thrown around
it
for a long time.
was. Yeah. And it was, my mother's way of having some control as a single mother,
Yeah.
after divorce. And she was raised by a German mother, my grandma. And, there were ways that things were done. Children didn't speak.
Yeah.
You spoke when you were allowed to speak,
Yeah.
whatever,
Yeah.
even though,
Children are seen but not heard.
yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And, and it's my house, so you do what I say. And,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so, that for me, I retreated into a lot of books, which I think led to this desire to write.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah, and do you want to talk a little bit about your book and how you got there, or how does it relate at all to this poem, or?
Well, it really does because so my book centers around being the doctor on an Everest expedition when I was a 25-year-old medical student.
Oh,
It was in Tibet, and it became a historic expedition because we did something never done before. And so I always wanted to tell this incredible adventure story. When I finally sat down to write it, all this family stuff came out.
mm,
I didn't know why, I didn't know where it was coming from. And, the process of writing is you kind of have to just go with it.
mhm,
I didn't know if that would be part of the book, but then that became really important to me because, I wanted to tell the story when I was young, but now I wanted to understand how did I get from this
mm,
background to being that young medical student
mm.
taking on this risk in the Himalayas. I was a city girl, immigrant parents.
Yeah.
Um, so thinking about my family and where they were from
Hmm.
and how that made me and where it made me want to go, um, all became tied together. And sometimes I was told that doesn't go together. That's two books, whatever.
Sure.
Um,
Mhm.
how you hear
Yeah.
advice along your writing
Yeah, yeah.
journey,
Yes.
and and I just became determined. Like
Mhm.
this became the story I wanted to tell, and I became determined to make it work.
Yeah.
So
I think for me, with this poem and with writing memoir, the greatest joy is making sense of things that we've lived through that we either didn't have the knowledge or the wisdom or the time to really understand. And I have I feel grateful for a greater understanding of myself and my circumstances.
yeah,
It makes my present life more enjoyable.
yeah. I mean, it's funny because writing opens up whole new dimensions.
Hmm.
Again, I grew up in Manhattan. My father was a psychotherapist. Almost everyone we knew were therapists or their parents were therapists. It's like a funny joke on
Yeah.
the Upper West Side. And, I grew up with psychology books.
Hmm.
So I thought I was a
Right.
very self aware, reflective person, done therapy myself.
Hmm.
The writing process really forces you
Hmm.
to examine things in a deeper way and to make connections that you didn't necessarily make before.
Hmm.
And then once you commit to memoir, you commit to sharing that and being vulnerable. I mean, the only way it works is if you're honest and vulnerable. So
Yeah.
then it becomes this whole other uncomfortable process you never thought you were getting into. Like, I thought, oh, I'm just writing my Everest adventure
Mm.
story. It was this incredible experience. Next thing I know, I'm like exposed, you know, feeling
Yeah.
completely naked. Um, and now with the book coming out, it's more and more of that, it's now doing an Instagram live for the first time, all the
You're doing great.
just things to thank you, like expose you even more,
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yes. And I think because I of course asked like all of my friends when I first started this if they wanted to join me, and many of them, because they're not writers or they don't write much now, they're like, no, no way do I want to do that. I don't want to. So obviously, a memoir, a whole book is one thing, but even like just sharing, if if you're really getting into it with this poem, I think it can feel vulnerable. Like,
yeah,
and that's the thing that I love about it is this container for us to share these stories, because I miss talking about these kinds of things, because as you get older, the opportunity to talk about where we're from or what formed us, they diminish. It's about the life we have now or the family we have now. And for a very long time, I just kind of felt like I was hung up. I mean, that's the pejorative way of saying it. Like, I just couldn't let go. And this project has helped me realize that that's not a necessity like I thought it was. Like, we don't have to let go. We can live all these lives at once.
that's true. And I, I love the idea of people who haven't been writing doing this
Oh, yeah.
because
Yes.
I it's like when you come across something like this, you want everyone you know
Yes.
to participate and do it and explore something about themselves and express themselves.
Yeah.
Is that's the other thing I think about with women. So it's International Women's Day. I'll bring it back to that.
Yeah.
You know, part of what I want to do with my book, and I also wrote a play, The Post-Row Monologues, which captured stories in a post-Row world, is elevate women's voices. But it really can be elevating anyone's voice, right? But like, let's talk about women today, you know, International Women's Day. But like, yes, use your voice, express yourself. Maybe you don't have to share it, but maybe it'll reach something else inside of you. And again, just that whole notion that everyone's voice is important. Everyone has a story to tell, something to share, that we may not be so comfortable doing it. And I definitely,
I agree.
yeah, that when we go outside our comfort zone, we grow in some way. It's hard.
Yes.
It always feels uncomfortable.
Yeah. Yeah. But I agree. Everyone does have a story to share. And I think that I mean, this format is open to anyone, writers, non-writers, women, men, anyone. It's been mostly women. I've had to recruit almost all the men just to say, hey, let's come join me. And I realize on a day like today, when people are posting things and tagging me about International Women's Day, I have worked really hard to mostly surround myself professionally with women, because those are the stories that I'm interested in reading and helping be told. I don't know if that's the right sentence. Helping to get told. It's awkward, because I I think that we're often told, and obviously this happens lots more to women of color, like that there's been one story about women, or Black women or Asian American women, and so we're good. We don't need any more, and that's a conversation I've had to have with myself as I'm writing. Like, oh well, I'm sure this is like kind of been covered, and
Yeah.
just
That's a big one. That's a big one.
yeah.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
I keep going because of my community of women, mostly, who encourage me to keep going and tell me they want to read it and tell they care. And I think it's important to have a community, because I think if you're by yourself, it's difficult. It's difficult to believe that what you have to say is
Yeah.
important. But it is. I'm here to tell you that it is. And it's not only important for other people, it's important for us.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned it requires persistence, you
It
know,
definitely does.
because that voice in your head, like, you're not good enough, you're not original, you're not deep enough, this has been told.
Mm-hmm.
But it's true. Your community then can say, you know, no, like,
Mm-hmm.
I love what you're saying. Or so I see some of my community
I
out
know,
there.
it's really sweet. Karen's here
My
too.
Yeah,
In mhm.
Casey, Karen Debonis, Casey Mulligan Wash, Eileen Borbeck Collins are my writing
Oh,
group.
I didn't know that.
Yes,
Hi, is that why you're here? Because they've all done a poem.
they've all done
Hello.
your poems.
Yes, they
Yes,
have.
that's why I'm here. I follow in their
Oh,
footsteps. They guide me. I feel
that's what a lovely writing group. What a great group of women. Yay,
they're
you.
they're wonderful.
Yes.
Yes, yes, I followed them here,
I'm
and
currently listening to a podcast with you, Eileen, and Lisa Cooper Allison right now. So
oh, I listened to that
worlds
too.
collide.
Wonder Lisa's amazing. Such
Yes.
a great, you know, a lot of us met in the binders, a
Yeah.
great community.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And it takes that, for me. There are people it doesn't take, but for me, it definitely take. You function as a unit. I think that's wonderful, Casey. You sort of just, I think you need, for me, I needed, because I stopped writing for a long time because I just was completely burned out and I just didn't have anything left. And I had to have, two people who kept telling me, oh, I'm going to read whatever you write someday. And I was like, but I'm not going to write anything. I'm done. Like, no, you will. And when you do, send it to me. Like, it took the persistence of those two people who I've thanked many times, to just keep at me.
so nice.
Hmm. Yeah. And I think that's something that women are actually really good at, and why we're so scary, and why the patriarchy is so intent on pushing us down, because women are great at community and holding each other up and encouraging one another. And we just have to keep going.
That's why it comes back to what you said. We all need to get out and vote. And when women have been given when we have been given, okay, every election since Roe was overturned, people have voted in favor of abortion access. Every
Yes.
state that's had it on the
Yeah.
ballot, every
Yes.
time people have been able to vote. Um, and so that's to your point. We need to just get out, do it, local, national. We have to show up. And I do think things can change again. I 100% believe that they can and will at some point. I don't know how long
I
it'll take.
know. I know. That's the thing. Yeah. It's a long road. But it's worth it. And it's really the only road that I know how to walk. So
Yeah.
just keep hoping, because otherwise they win when you give up hope.
Yeah, so that's the other thing I've been thinking a lot with my father that I mentioned in the piece. So he was the only Holocaust survivor in his
Wow.
family. He fought for democracy, civil rights, peace in Israel. He fought his whole life for all those things. So every day that I fight for my passions, which are mostly women's rights,
Mm-hmm.
democracy, voting rights, immigrants, a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
But it's like him. He's in me. I feel him behind me. When I can get down about the whole thing,
Sure.
somehow he always had this balance and optimism. I mean, he was a little remote and cold, which was part of that balance. But I appreciate it so much, and I think of him, and he motivates me. So that's another way that they're in us, and it's important to recognize them, mention them, think about
Mm-hmm.
them. So another reason I
What was
love
his name?
your
Was it in the
project,
poem?
Isaac
Okay.
Zelig, Zieman, not his
Yes.
born name. He had to go through many identities
Yeah.
to survive the war, but that
Yeah.
was his American name.
Yeah. I think it's like lovely to say their names.
Yeah.
I appreciate that the poem prompts that, but I also just in general think um, every time I say my brother Michael's name, who died when I was 10, I feel like, oh, he's here. Little acknowledgement of his
Yeah.
presence and how much he means to me still.
Yeah. That's so special.
Yeah. And I think lots of times we shy away from making other people uncomfortable. And so we don't talk about these kinds of things. And Sarah and I have that in common, sibling loss. So she just put a heart in the comments.
Oh, Sarah.
Yeah. So,
Sarah is a sweetheart.
yeah. She's also done a poem. This is it's like a little mini reunion. So, I appreciate this prompt and this opportunity to also invite people to talk about things that might make other people uncomfortable, or other situations where they feel like, oh, I don't want to dredge all this up. It's like, oh no, please come dredge it all up and share it with me. I'm interested. Does it make me uncomfortable? So, oh, thank you, Sarah.
Well, when we do that, we normalize
Yes.
those things that we
Yeah.
all want to hide or keep to
Yeah.
ourselves or feel uncomfortable. And
Mm-hmm.
that's a gift that you're giving the world by doing this,
Thank you. Yeah. I try not to cry during these, because otherwise I would probably cry during yes, and you too, Casey. Yes, we haven't had that
Oh,
conversation
yeah.
at length, but yes.
Mm-hmm.
And as typical with grief, I often think of Casey's other losses first and your sibling.
Yes.
Which is a conversation we have in sibling loss spaces. It sort of is down. It's not the first one we think about. So it's
Yeah.
important to talk about all of them.
I don't think siblings get enough attention in their influence in our lives anyway.
Yeah.
When you think about, like, I didn't mention my brother, but he was as probably big as my parents shaping my early years. So,
No, I don't
something.
think they do. And for me personally, that was a thing. That was a tool I used to try to not really unpack what I'd been through as a child, because a lot
Yeah.
of it was from my siblings, bad stuff. And so it was like, oh, well, they're just my siblings. It wasn't my mom, or whatever. Like we find ways to survive and
Yeah.
ways to tell ourselves stories that get us through.
Yeah.
So I'm grateful that from a place of safety and comfort, I can look back at my young self and give her some grace and compassion.
Yeah. And I'm sorry you went through that.
Thank you. Well, I appreciate it. I'm grateful that I have the tools and um, safety that I never imagined I would have. So I I have a life that I didn't know existed when I was a young person, and I try to go back and tell her it's going to be okay.
Yeah.
You're going to make it. Um, so, and I think that's also the point of this project in a larger way too. Is none of us are really alone with where we're from.
Yeah.
But even though we have all these disparate experiences, the humanity is shared, and we've all got a story, like you said, and we've all been through something.
Absolutely.
So.
And it definitely, those feelings draw people to write. And a lot of your community and my community are writers working these things
Mm-hmm.
out. But what's beautiful is at the same time building community. Like you've just mentioned many people you've met through this who have also had sibling
Mm-hmm.
loss, like you came together through this, through
Mm-hmm.
writing, through sharing stories, through being honest. And that's amazing connection, because that's what people want to be seen. They want to feel
Yeah,
connection.
yeah, that's the thing
They
I've
want to be
really
heard.
learned
Yeah.
more than anything is that just making a space where you're seen. Like I think as you do, you create things you need, and
Yeah.
that's what I what I wanted and needed. And then I realized, oh, there's a lot of people who want and need that space to just be seen.
Yes.
Yeah.
To not be told who do you think you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And in those moments, I mean, you can never, or even later with those kinds of situations, say, what's the right answer? Which was something I was very consumed with as a young person. I was trying to figure out the right answer and believing there was one. Um, it was too devastating to imagine there wasn't a right answer. So when
Mm-hmm.
I'm confronted with those things now, I think there was no
Yeah.
right answer. Those questions. Anyway, thank you, Casey. That's very. This is it's been a really lovely International Women's Day poetry event. Mimi, thank you for having the foresight. I didn't even know it was that day when you asked. Like, sure, let's do it on that day. So, thank you. Do you have any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Just really grateful for you, Allison. I think it's a wonderful project. Like I said, I hope everyone participates, whether
And
they show
everyone is welcome.
or
Please reach
not.
out.
Reach out to Allison. She's open to people that aren't writers.
Absolutely.
And I'm thankful for you, Allison, and thank you for having me on, giving
Thank
me
you.
that opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. And thank you for your whole writers group and everyone else who's here. What a treat. I really appreciate it. It's happy International Women's Day. I agree. It is the perfect conversation. So thank you so much, everyone. This was
Thank you.
lovely.
Thank you
Okay.
so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.